I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I really enjoy these kinds of sessions. I think our community have a lot of work to do in terms of telling our story. So that was me back in the days. I'm actually a natural blonde. So today we're gonna do a bit of story selection. It's the most important thing. Like, you can learn to tell a story, but if you don't know what stories to tell, you're not gonna go viral, you're not gonna achieve any kind of substantial reach. We're gonna look at how to structure a story, how to put it together in a way that is easily to watch. We're gonna look at openings, what makes for a good opening of a story, how do you grab somebody's attention. We're gonna talk about formats, there's many different types of videos that you can create. I was actually in traditional media. I was a journalist for like 13, 14 years. I used to work at CNN International in London. I've been a foreign correspondent. I've covered Syria, Congo, Sudan, Egypt. I've been to about 100 countries around the world as a journalist. Saw the very best and worst of humanity. I think sometimes when we think about the media, we think of like these men in a big tower giving a call to say, do this, don't do this. It's not like that. I've been in these organizations. They lack so much diversity that they inherently believe the views that they believe, right? It's not that they're like being fed a line, because journalists are actually quite critical people by their nature. They push back against being told what to do. The people they hire and the makeup of their organizations are an accurate representation of the kinds of content they produce. The opportunity is citizens. If you think about this iceberg, and this represents people telling stories, at the top of the iceberg is who? Publishers, influencers, these kinds of folks. Down the bottom are billions and billions of people with amazing stories. These people have access to Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, but if you don't know how to tell a story, you'll never be seen, you'll never be heard. You're constantly left below the surface, right? Like, even in the context of the UK, the majority of the media attention is obviously in London. And BBC are making attempts to decentralize that by moving their headquarters out to Manchester and, looking further afield. But how many stories do we see coming out of Wales, Cardiff specifically? Like, a very low representation, right? And I'm learning through my short amount of time here, and even the representation in this room, this is a substantially more diverse Muslim audience than I speak to perhaps anywhere in the world, right? Like, ethnically, we're from a whole bunch of backgrounds. That diversity lives down here. It's our ability to train and empower marginalized communities at a grassroots level that enables us to get access to really amazing stories around the world. Told you a little about myself. I've been a foreign correspondent for a long time, a journalist. I became well known for Mojo, for mobile journalism. In fact, Maria was speaking about how we first connected. She was looking in a book in a library around mobile journalism, and that's kind of how we linked up a few years ago. My whole thing is, how do we use the mobile phone as an enabler to help communities tell their own stories? I first started pitching it many years ago. I was speaking at a conference in Denmark, and this was Nick Robinson, who was the political editor at the BBC. And all I'd said was that people with mobile phones could tell their own stories, and journalists could fact check it, verify it, and turn it into editorial content.
Yeah, but this isn't journalism. I would die rather than do it. I don't want to watch it either. Curating selfies isn't journalism.
So he said, this isn't journalism. And I mean, jump forward to today, name a singular story that hasn't been broken by citizens on the ground, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's in Ukraine. It is citizens that are bringing us the biggest stories around the world.
What year was that?
That was in 2014. The crazy bit is, I'm aging, we're 10 years on. Many traditional journalists still believe that they are the sole arbiters of truth. The fact of the matter is, do I trust, if there was a fire taking place here right now, do I trust this one camera? I mean, this guy's a great guy, but do I trust this one camera? Or do I trust all of your phones all on the same, on the fire? I would trust all of your phones, right? A large collection of people all on the same thing helps provide more evidence, more authenticity. So my co-founder and I, who's also my wife, Sumaya, we quit our jobs, we traveled around the whole world, and we trained up thousands of people how to tell stories with their phones. We went everywhere, almost every country. We trained people up, and we created this huge network of mojos, of what you call mobile journalists.
Umrah. I know. Yusuf, Renta. Amara. Ina.
And what do you want to do when you finish school?
Doctor. Artist. Civil officer. Software engineer. Lawyer. Teacher.
Everybody wants to be a doctor in this room.
Be a journalist. I want to be a journalist.
So we did that, and we started publishing a lot of videos. And remember, the videos are predominantly not featuring me. In fact, 99% of the videos are just citizens sharing their own lived experience. And we have a team of over 55 journalists fact-checking, verifying, and curating it. Jump forward to today. We have 7 million subscribers. You can find us on social media. If you look for Scene TV, you can see the branding behind you guys. We're on Instagram. We've got 7 million subscribers on Snapchat. We've published over 4,000 stories. So we're really building the world's biggest human experience library. And we do about 1 billion views a year. So really, really high volumes of video, high volume of views, and at low cost. We don't buy any cameras. We're literally just working with citizens with mobile phones. That audience are very young. They're predominantly Gen Zs, age 13 to 24. So that gives you a little bit of kind of substance of like this kind of content can travel really far and wide. This is a sense of what the content looks like.
I have never seen so many dead bodies.
Don't watch me!
My story might seem sad, but
maybe it will save someone else's life.
Keep fighting, because people want you here. It's not your fault.
This is really the Africa, but I just want to be a part of the next generation that's gonna make a change.
Oh, I want to be a judge that's listening. I'm waiting.
What should you never say to an assault survivor?
Does worrying to call you a terrorist? No! Have you seen this?
How does this game changing?
The CCIU is stating this should save places.
Don't uncomfortable water.
My sense of expression is validated.
I am seen. I feel seen.
We are seen.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
So that gives you an idea of the kind of diversity and the nature of the content that we produce. So let's get into some more practical stuff. Well, before I do, any questions on the kind of the way that we currently operate, the way that we work, and the kinds of stories that we tell?
What sources are reputable, like the primary, tertiary, and so on, secondary, tertiary, sources? Then obviously, surely, video and mobile phone media will become the new primary source, especially of an event that may happen in the future or whatever, or like, for example, what's going on now in Gaza. Surely they are primary sources. So really, it's just changing as the world changes. So those journalists are way stuck in the in the dark ages. Ironically, the pun historically. But yeah, I just wanted to.
I love that comment. I wish I said that to that dude on stage. Exactly. How can we deny that more sources are not valuable, even if they're lies? Even a lie is a useful source. Like it tells you something. I think the one thing is, I think anybody in the world can be a reporter, right? Somebody can report something happens, and then there's a series of journalistic steps which turns it into editorial content. The ability to fact check it, to verify it, to take it through these kinds of editorial guidelines. The other thing is people often think, well, a citizen in Gaza is not objective. They can't objectively report on what's happening. That's true. They're incredibly subjective. Right? Their reality is based on living in the world's biggest prison, open-air prison. Again, that doesn't mean it's not concentration camp. I use both languages. Yeah, I mean, so just because they're subjective doesn't mean it's not of value. In fact, I say if it's subjective, it's even more valuable and more interesting. It's just about the journalists contextualizing where their position comes from. Any other thoughts before we move into the next stage?
Why I say talking about that terminology is
yes.
because an open-air prison implements that they are they're criminals. So that's why it's important that we change the narrative, the language that we use, even in the media, because that's the whole point of getting the correct terminology. So when people say open-air prison, and I did the same, we all said that it's the same rhetoric that we're all taught to regurgitate. So now we've got to really start thinking about how do we, when we're telling our stories, how do we then come across and use the correct terminology and actually decolonize the language that's used, because the language is very important.
So you're saying don't use the words
open-air prison is not, because they're not criminals.
And also prisoners still get fed. So.
Absolutely, and they're not.
Learning something good new. It's important. Yeah, exactly. I think if their only crime is being Palestinian, then what crime is that? All right, so I love this, by the way. This is really great. We're going to move into how to tell your story. Okay? We're going to go through a couple different formats. Some of them are really easy. Some of them are a little bit more challenging. But it should all be pretty useful stuff that you can use in your everyday life. Okay, so this is the easiest method I've ever come across to promote yourself or your business, or to tell a very, very simple story about yourself, your business, your service. Even if you got like an NGO or a campaign or something, you need to tell the world about it. And it's this format. Start with a problem statement. Start with a problem statement. So you'll notice when I came to you guys, I opened with a problem. I spoke about the lack of diversity in the media landscape. And I said that means that CNN and these publishers are unable to accurately tell you what's happening around the world, right? The second thing you need to do after you've established a problem is you need to connect your problem to the audience. You need to say, this is my problem, but guess what? It's your problem too. And I did that to you guys as well. I said, yo, the media lacks diversity. And then I said, and because of that, you're not represented. We don't see stories from Wales. We don't see stories from Cardiff. Remember, I did that to you. I started with my problem, and then I pushed it on to becoming your problem too. So I created a sense of relevance. I said, oh, you go, oh, there's something wrong there. And you said, oh, wait, there's something wrong for me too. The third thing you do is you paint a picture of what a better future could look like. And this is generally using words like imagine a world where, or an alternative to that is what if? What if this? What if that? What if this? And I started doing that to you guys as well. I started painting a picture of the bottom of the iceberg and I said, what if these communities could tell their own stories? What if we could have these guys be heard, right? Because then what does that do to you as an audience? You're at the edge of your seat. You're like, I want that. Whatever he's about to say next, like I need that in my life. And then you land on yourself, your NGO, now in a minute could be, that's the power of now in a minute, right? Like we're landing on that solution line. Come join me. Let's try it. Let's have a thought exercise. So for your initiative, how would we break that down into a little story?
So coming with a problem.
Yeah, what's the problem that we're solving for?
So the problem is that there is a lack of uptake in creative industries amongst Muslims in Wales.
There's a lot of lack of uptake. Okay, so young Muslims are not getting involved in creative stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Now give me the relevance to somebody who's watching this video.
Majority of the people think that in order to make it in the creative industry, you have to go outside of Wales. You have to go to London, you have to go to Manchester, Birmingham.
Nice. Okay. So Muslims are disconnected from the creative industries. Yeah. Those that want to get involved now have to leave Wales, which means that there's less of a chance that we're ever going to build a creative economy here.
Yeah.
Imagine a world.
Imagine a world where people came to Cardiff for the scene, because there's a uniqueness to this community that everyone knows there to be. We have our own culture, we have our own language, we have many languages. And so, yeah, imagine a world where Cardiff was the scene for people, for Muslims particularly, to come to grow their creative knowledge.
Now it's just sell.
That's the power of now in a minute.
It works, right? And most people, unfortunately, do this at the start. They go straight in with their business. They're like, hi, my name is Mariam. I'm not going to tell you about now in a minute. We are an organization that does X, Y, and Z. And automatically, like, an audience, you switch off because you're like, you're selling me something. This is like your ad blocker goes on in your brain of like, this is a promotion. I'm not listening anymore. Reading a story. It's a little bit different in the way we structure. There's 3 main parameters that our team use to determine whether we think a video has got viral potential. Obviously, some videos can go viral outside of this, but these are the ones that we can pretty regularly predict. 1, is it visual? Is there actually good visuals? I need you to be very critical around this question, because what you think is visual is not always visual. If we did a story on a blind cyclist, somebody who's blind and they're cycling, that sounds visual because they're cycling, etc. But it's actually not, because a blind cyclist and a regular cyclist visually look very similar. They just look like a cyclist. So when you're on a social media timeline, it doesn't grab your attention, right? Like visual means it's like visually stands out from what your expectations are. If you did a story on a small business selling hijabs, it's not particularly visual. You could make it visual if somebody tied a hijab in a particularly extraordinary way, or they did it incredibly fast, or it was in like a Barbie pink and it had like crazy sequences on it. Like, but you know what I mean? Like, you really got to ask yourself up top on the story I'm telling, is this story visual? Is it visually interesting, visually unique? And be very critical about that. You need to really find highly visual stories. The second criteria is it debatable. If a story is not debatable, if there's not some people that will agree and other people will disagree, it tends to be a little bit boring. Because like we all know where it's going, right? If we can all agree like, oh yeah, it's not that interesting. If I watch a story about how we should all pick up litter because litter's bad, I don't really care because like there's no question for debate there. Like it just is what it is. The third criteria is, do people care? And caring has a bunch of like different aspects to it, but I think the most important one for you is there a sense of recency or relevancy? Is there something that's in the now, in the vogue, that people are talking about recently that makes that subject interesting? If you can nail all three of these, if it's visual, if it's debatable, and if people care about that subject right now, if you can tick those three boxes, you're pretty well positioned for a relatively viral piece of content. It's also worth thinking about visual hooks. Right now, if you're scrolling on TikTok or one of these social media platforms, you basically make a decision in the opening, not even 3 seconds, not even a second, fraction of a frame about whether you're going to keep watching or whether you're going to scroll on to the next piece of content. So not only do you have to be thinking about what the subject is that you choose, you also have to be thinking, if I do cover that video, what's the opening frame or the opening second of that video going to be that's going to grab my attention and keep me watching till the end, right? So these are all examples of visually stimulating hooks, and they're for different reasons. This one is what you'd call oddly satisfying. There's something oddly satisfying about the notion of that balloon potentially bursting. The second one, is what you'd call like implied motion. Somebody's in a motion, something's about to happen, something's going to change. And the third one, especially with this car coming down, is what I'd call a wait for it moment. A wait for it moment is like, you can see a frame, but the frame is changing all the time. And again, stick around, let me buy 2 seconds of your time because this frame is, you're going to get a little story right up top. Really, really important to think about your openings for all of your stories. So one of the easiest formats to possibly produce is what we call a VO format, which is visuals and voice, or what we call voiceover. Voiceover means visuals, putting down a series of videos and using your voice to narrate the story. It's literally the easiest thing because you can do it retroactively. You can have a bunch of footage from a bunch of events that you've had in the past, and you can still generate a video piece of content from it. I'm going to give you an example. You can probably see I'm like a bit limpy. I ran the London Marathon. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. The day before yesterday, in these ridiculous toe shoes, Palestinian flag. This is an example of a voiceover edit. So all the footage I lay down, I then use the microphone and I narrate under it, and you kind of write to visuals. Very, very.
I carried the Palestinian flag for 26 miles on the London Marathon, but I was not alone.
If the people of Palestine can endure 75 years of occupation over 6 months of attempted genocide, we can run 42 Ks.
Back today, it felt like almost every lamppost in this city had a Palestinian flag on it. They were everywhere.
There are Palestinian flags everywhere on this run.
The British government are not sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, but it seems like the people of London feel a very different way.
Free! Free! Yes! So far, I haven't seen a single Israeli flag. I've seen tons of Palestinian flags. Free! Free Palestine! Free! Free Palestine! Free! Free Palestine!
Everybody's cheering on Palestine. Not one Israeli flag here.
Ahmed, this is for you. This is for your family. This is for the people of Palestine. Free Palestine.
The next format that's interesting is Listicles. Listicles. I'm sure you see them all the time, right? Top 5 things to do in Cardiff. Top 3 things you don't understand about Ramadan. These kinds of things. They're very easy and they're very popular. The reason why it's very effective is because social media platforms look at watch time and retention. They say, oh, is somebody watching till the end? And a listicle tends to increase the amount of retention because you stick through and you kind of know what you're in for. This is a Palestine listicle that I did. Notice how I set up the listicle, but I tease at sticking around till the end. It's very important in a listicle to tease that the last thing that you're going to get is the best thing. Because if you don't do that, they don't stay.
Israel banned coriander from entering Gaza, and it's been that way for years. Indians call it danya. In Arabic, they say kispara. And in America, they call it cilantro. This stuff is eaten all over the world, but it's banned in Gaza. And that's not even the craziest part. Yo, it's Yusuf Omar, and here are the 20 most surprising things that are banned from Gaza. The last one will absolutely shock you. Since 2016, chocolates have been banned. Vinegar, potato chips, newspapers, sewing machines, heaters, and even jam, all banned.
Right, so a listicle is a very easy format.
So Yusuf, you're from where?
Born in the UK, raised in Australia, grown up in South Africa.
So it's your second time to Wales, but like you're...
Yeah, I came when I was very young, a long time ago.
So I have some Welsh cakes for you, and I want you to try them.
Welsh cakes. I got my tea ready as well.
Give them a verdict out.
Thank you.
It's a tradition that we do at every creative post-up with a guest.
Oh, how interesting. It looks like a pancake. Oh, I dig it. It is like a squash scone. No, it's tastier than a scone. I'll give it a good 9. Oh, they're yummy. All right, so what's next? We looked at the first session about how to tell a story. I hope you guys got some ideas there around setting up your story, around how to structure it. I hope you got some ideas around how to open your story, how to grab people's attention at the very top, retention, keeping people watching to the end, listicles formats, what kinds of stories do well, visual, debatable, things that people care about, all those kinds of things. I just want to talk very briefly about where the future storytelling is going. Do you think that phones are the future? I don't. Phones suck. We're like this. I didn't see Cardiff today. My phone saw Cardiff, right? Looking through my device. Especially after I had a kid, I realized more how removed we are from the world because of our mobile devices. Do you guys think VR is the future? I don't think VR is the future. I tried living in a VR headset for like a year. Eating, pooping, working, everything. It was terrible. Who wants to live inside of a computer? When I finish work, I want to be with my family. I don't want to be inside a computer. I don't think VR is the future. However, I do believe that the future is going to be a singular device on your face, a singular pair of glasses. I think you're going to look at the world around you and information will be overlaid onto it. I've been wearing computers on my face for about 10 years now. A long time. Like, for example, I wear these glasses and these have screens inside. I can see my emails, directions, notifications, like what time, like I know I need to catch the last train back to London tonight. All that information is in front of me. So I've been rocking these for many years trying to understand where it's going. It's what you call augmented reality. Taking the real reality and augmenting the internet onto it. In my bag, I've also got a Vision Pro. I mean, Apple, all these organizations are investing a lot in this space. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, this sounds terrible. It sounds like a casino on your face. Bing, 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 bing. It's not that at all. It's subtle, useful information when you need it most. I think the phone is like a casino with all the notifications. I think when done right, subtle technology can be very beneficial to our lives. I'll give you an example of one of the technologies that we built on this headset. I pray in Arabic. I don't speak any Arabic. I can see the Quran in English. It's not even an idea. It exists. You guys can try it out. It's on these. Yeah, it exists. So when I'm praying, I can see the Quran in English. I've had some imams tell me I can't do that, but I go with it anyway. It's a really big shift that's happening in the world. By 2025, by the end of next year, according to some reports, about 75% of the world will use augmented reality on a regular basis, because AR is not starting here, it's actually starting on our mobile phones. If you look at AR lenses, filters, trying things on, trying shoes on, hats, lipstick, makeup, jewelry, this trend is already happening. I first got into this space in 2015, 2016. I was working with a group of rape survivors in India, young women that had been raped or sexually assaulted. And we were able to give them our phones, and they were able to use Snapchat face filters to hide their identities, but they were still able to tell their stories. And it was the first time in my life I realized the capabilities of using this technology for a purpose it wasn't necessarily designed for. We've also built some really cool tech where you can basically self-interview, where you open up the camera and you go through a series of questions and you can respond. So if you experience Islamophobia, for example, you are self-interviewing, guided through that interview process. Just a few other examples of tech that we've done with these glasses, because I really do believe it's the future of storytelling. I think as a community, we need to understand where the future is going so we can start preparing for it today, especially as young creatives. We created an experience in South Africa where, they have all these colonial statues, which are often really nasty people. And a lot of native populations want to have these statues removed. Same in the UK, I think. There's been a call to remove a lot of these statues. We created this effect where you could look at the statue with your glasses or with your phone, and it came to life. And the statue's like, I was a fantastic general. And then the horse wakes up and fact checks the general. It's like, no, you weren't, you're a racist. And they have a whole debate about the statue's legacy, right? So like, I think the issue with statues, personally, I think the issue is that they don't have enough context. I think if we had a big sign explaining why these are nasty people, it's actually quite useful. So I think that's what AR allows for. When my wife was pregnant, we were able to overlay the baby's body onto her body so we could see week by week progress. In Boston, we created a storytelling experience. We can walk around and see the Boston Marathon. You can see the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, and you can watch them attempt to pull it off the race. It's from like the 1960s, but you can see it overlaid into the physical cities. All kinds of really cool experiences. It's a really scary phenomenon right now, right? Where Google and other companies are, for example, in the case of Google, using their cloud-based technology as surveillance effectively for Palestinian populations and as a technology to facilitate the occupation. To be honest, I think it's the same as every other aspect of evil around this occupation. I think it's probably going to come down to boycotts. We represent 1/3 of humanity. 1/3 of humanity stops using a service, that service starts to pay attention. Whether we're all as a collective willing to sacrifice that and say, hey, we don't use Google accounts anymore, and email and calendar and search and all that, I don't know how that's going to play out. That's your jobs as storytellers, right? Yeah, kind of reminds me of Greta Thunberg when asked what was the biggest impact we can all have on climate change. She said we should just be more conscious. It's the same thing. What's the biggest impact we can all have on the occupation? It's just to be more conscious of how our consumer purchases impact it.